Gugu. Thank you, Gugu. I never fully recognize myself in these introductions, right? So you're always too kind. Thank you. The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposing ideas in mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. One should, for example, be able to see that things are hopeless, yet be determined to make them otherwise. F. Scott Fitzgerald. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it is an immense honor to welcome you today as we reflect on South Africa's journey over the past 30 years and look forward to a brighter future. In April 1994, the first democratically elected government came into power in South Africa. The ANC faced the enormous task of leading a government of national unity and turning around the challenging economic landscape that it had inherited. We saw GDP recover and ran between 3% and above between 1994 and 2007, and actually even exceeded 5% between 2004 and 2007. 30 years later, and it's sometimes easy to forget the great strides that our country has made. Millions have been lifted out of poverty and provided with access to education, thus providing them with a real opportunity to participate in the economy. The reality is that though we have several economic challenges that are hampering South Africa's ability to meet its full potential, yes, we have inflation, high unemployment, the energy crisis. There are green shoots that reflect that we are at an inflection point. In 2017, Franz Cronje, a scenario planner, wrote a book called A Time Traveler's Guide to South Africa in 2030. In it, he provides a thought-provoking analysis of South Africa's potential futures, laying out 4 potential scenarios based on what he was seeing as trends back then. In those 4 scenarios, he identifies the first one being what he calls the rise of the right, whereby government significantly expands its control, such as has been seen in the likes of Rwanda and Singapore. His second scenario is what he calls the tyranny of the left, whereby the government tightens its grip on power, not for reform, but to quash dissent, such as has been seen in economies such as Zimbabwe, unfortunately. The third is the breakup scenario, whereby economic decline continues at such a pace and unabated, with rising inequality leading to social unrest. In his fourth and most optimistic scenario, which he calls the rise of the rainbow, South Africa preserves and strengthens its democracy as a means of securing an economic recovery. He highlights the following 5 flags that are indicators that this fourth pathway may materialize. Firstly, we see the ANC and the DA come together around the importance of sensible reforms. Then, that translates into a turn in government policy that seeks out private sector investment to take the lead in rebuilding South Africa. The policy is effectively implemented, and racial and social tensions are transitioned into a new mood of unity and common purpose. We see a recovery in the global economy, and with South Africa well poised to take advantage of that, we once again see ourselves recovering to a GDP in the 5% region. On the 6th of June 2024, President Ramaphosa announced that the ANC had chosen to form a government of national unity once again. And as we meet today for the 10th edition of South Africa's biggest annual board meeting, preparations are well underway for a game-changing national discourse around this. There, business, social partners, civil society, and political parties will attempt to reach consensus on how to take the country forward. The very fact that we engage in a gathering, such as what we have today, and what must be taking place as our politicians deliberate on the GNU and its implications, together with other conversations that are taking place across South Africa, suggests that South Africa has a historic opportunity to make another new start. And that 30 years after the election of Nelson Mandela as president, there is a real opportunity that Frans Cronje's fourth scenario may well materialize. South Africa has always had a strong collaboration between government, civil society organizations, and business. We have seen business leaders provide a positive and impactful contribution to multiple areas, such as the National Energy Crisis Committee and the Joint Initiative on Crime and Corruption. As a collective, we are well placed to make our voices heard as we jointly build and unlock the vision for the future of our great country. South Africa's biggest board meeting provides a glimpse of the courageous dialogue that we need to hold in order to leverage the business sector's influence and resources to help to develop bold strategies which make the next 30 years a generation of truly equitable development. Last year, this forum focused on social impact, specifically on ESG. There were conversations around the energy and infrastructure crisis and smart technologies, all of which spoke to growing the South African economy and addressing the challenges that we faced. We saw government respond to the energy crisis with several key policy initiatives that promote private sector participation and aim to diversify the energy mix towards more renewable resources. As a result, last year alone, private sector registered renewable energy projects that will generate well over twice the generating capacity of the Kujenga nuclear power station. Collectively, these policy changes will encourage private investment, diversify the energy mix in the country, and enhance energy security. At the same time, they support the transition to a more sustainable and resilient energy ecosystem. This year's discussions will center around three main topics: the rise of artificial intelligence in South Africa, a revisit of the next generation of public-private partnerships, and unpacking the challenge of poverty alleviation. There can be no doubt that technology will continue to play a critical role in the trajectory of the world. And as a leader in the ICT space, BCX is ready to lead the charge in South Africa. As we prepare to do so, aiming to bring to fruition our belief in technology's potential to transform lives and lifestyles over the next 30 years, it's interesting to reflect back on what the technology landscape looked like back in 1994. Back then, as we voted in the first democratic elections, hardly anyone had access to the internet, let alone mobile phones. The Netscape browser and the first smartphone, which had a battery power and time of less than an hour, were released in 1994. And that was also the year that Amazon was founded. 2 years later, Business Connection was launched by 23-year-old twins, Benjamin and Isaac Mopatlane. The company has grown alongside our democracy and our customers, and today we work with businesses all the way from entrepreneurs, JSE-listed companies, and international corporations. Wi-Fi came along in 1997, Google in 1998, and I still find it shocking that both Facebook and X are less than 20 years old. When we consider how these technologies and platforms have become almost ubiquitous, we have a right to feel positive and optimistic about what the next 30 years holds for us. That's because we've already seen digital transformation. We've experienced what it can offer, and we've embraced it. It's changed our habits and lifestyles. It's revolutionized the way we communicate, and it's changed our working lives and left them almost unrecognizable. When Estonia regained independence from Russia in 1991, it faced the challenge of rebuilding its economy and infrastructure. At the time, the government decided to prioritize digital transformation, and it invested heavily in a nationwide high-speed internet infrastructure. A digital ID that allowed secure online authentication and access to government resources, and online portals for a wide range of services, including voting. The e-government system dramatically reduced bureaucracy and saved the government a fortune. More significantly, the ease of doing business attracted foreign investment, and Estonia is now seen as the hub of fintech and startups. The UN's latest e-government index gives Estonia a score of 94% and places it 8th in the world rankings. That is the power of positive policy making. And with new reserves of optimism flowing through our veins as South Africa, it ideally places us to follow in the likes of Estonia as examples. The speed and scale of digital transformation can be seen as a proxy for the power that we have to effectively drive meaningful transformation in our country over the next 30 years. In her book titled Mission Economy, A Moonshot Guide to Changing Capitalism, the Italian economist Mariana Mazzucato argues for a radical shift in how we approach government and economic systems. Mazzucato, a member of President Cyril Ramaphosa's Economic Advisory Council, identifies 4 main changes that would need to take place for capitalism to transition from its current form. The first is what she calls short-termism in the finance sector, with business focusing on quarterly returns. In turn, what this has translated to is a focus on financial gain over value creation. This in the context of an ever-increasing reality of climate change and its broader implications for the way we live and plan our lives, and what she terms almost the tinkering of governments instead of the leading of governments, with her argument that the prevailing ideology that a government is there to fix problems and not to achieve bold objectives is no longer fit for purpose. She outlines various solutions in her book, and I'd like to leave you with 3 big ideas coming from her work. The first is the role of vision and leadership. Mazzucato argues for a government that sets such bold aspirations for its people that it sets off catalytic reactions across society and leads the charge with what has to be done and tilts the playing field to enable achievement of these objectives. Secondly, a refreshed approach to value and the collective process through which it is created. We need business, government, and civil society to create value together, with none being relegated to only being on the sidelines, either as cheerleaders or as naysayers of one another. The third is about distribution and ensuring inclusive growth. She introduces the notion of pre-distribution as opposed to redistribution, and with an emphasis on good, meaningful jobs, collective ownership structures, and a mechanism to distribute value in a way that replenishes it across all value contributors. I want to wind down with a reflection on the Springboks and the leadership lessons that we can all gain from. Rassie Erasmus and his team were very clear that they were not playing for themselves, but to provide hope to the whole nation. That driving purpose, together with an ability to have courageous conversations as a team, to play each team member to their strengths, and to have a can-do attitude in the face of hardships has enabled us to have the greatest showing of Springboks that we have ever seen. As business leaders, let's find our own ways to do this in our spaces, to bring hope and unleash potential, knowing that every single South African has the ability to play a meaningful and significant role in the country's transformation. I'll close off with another quote. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood, and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. Thank you.